Hello, I am the Mobious Strip, and today we're going to be having another video about game theory. Before we get started with today's video about DEI, I'm going to quickly explain what game theory is. Game theory involves an agent or a human being with free will or agency. They have the options of lowering their defenses for cooperation, remaining guarded, not attacking and not cooperating, and attacking. And let's get into today's video. Have you ever told a left-wing person that people should be judged as equals and held to an equal standard?
For a black student, they could do 30% worse on their standardized scores than an equivalent white student.
And you don't think that has any outside factors to do with it?
Well, that's not the point. The point is whether or not...
But how is that not the point?
Because I don't believe we should accommodate based on outside factors. You do.
Well, I do, because I believe in progression. And I feel like you have stated in multiple of your videos, which I do have a quote.
No, fair enough. I'm just making sure we understand we disagree. I don't think we should change the rules of the game to accommodate...
What were the rules of the game?
Well, the rules of the game are that you should be treated fairly and equally, right?
For sure.
That's an American principle.
And I agree with that completely.
Got it. So, therefore, a white male should not be treated differently than a black male.
But when you come from a different...
Doesn't matter.
But the
equal...
And if you do say this just like Charlie did there, you know what it's like to be called racist. It has been a common and persistent belief of the left that DEI is necessary to keep certain, but not all, non-white groups to succeed in America. In today's video, I'm going to show how DEI has been implemented, and through the lens of game theory, I will show how the unintended consequences of DEI were both predictable and more harmful to the groups that leftists claim to want to help than helpful. Finally, now that some, but not all, DEI has been ended, or at least the momentum is leading to the ending of DEI in this country, I will show how the removal of DEI was not a white supremacist idea, but a genuine desire to have the most qualified people to be put in the most important positions. So start off, what is DEI? This is a massive debate, and the right and the left will not agree on this one. My personal and favorite clip is here.
I think that might be it. Is that the affirmative action one? I don't know.
No, it's not the affirmative action. It's for DEI. So within that executive order, where does it say that they're solely focused on making people get into jobs? For instance, like United Airlines, right? You mentioned that, well, let's pause that. I'm going to get to here. So for an example of DEI is basically your daughter, right? She decides to get a job, right? And unfortunately, it's that time of the month. She goes into the bathroom. Calm down. She goes into the bathroom. Stop. She's going into the bathroom.
You're losing the audience, man.
I don't care. I'm talking to you. So she goes into the bathroom, right? And she goes into the bathroom and gets a tampon or a pad that's been given from the job. That is DEI. That is literally, yes. Yeah. You don't know. That's great. So
that one's my favorite clip. That's obviously not what DEI is. I have no idea what he was talking about. Conservatives in the early 2000s through the 2010s did not correctly identify the full problem. And you can easily find videos from between that time period of conservative voices of the time claiming that college slots were being given to black students from white students. So if now some people don't understand what that means, but effectively, if a white student gets the exact same ACT, SAT score, same GPA in high school as a black student, that the black student effectively is going to get that position. This is actually not 100% right. This was only half true. I'll say half true-ish. The reality was actually weirder, because remember the leftist over here, he or she, they, them, wants to help minorities, or at least that's what they're constantly saying. But the reality was that left-wingers, they are nearly fully in control of America's universities, and certainly were between the time period of 2010 to 2020. They are aware that the best students in America are East Asian and Southeast Asian students, and the worst students are Black Americans. They also believe that telling the truth is not politically correct, so they will and have lied about this, while at the same time taking actions and making decisions that show that they know and are fully aware that these two claims, that Asian students, and I mean East Asian, Southeast Asian, are the best students and that black students are the worst students. They know this and they're lying about it. What they would do is they would raise the required grade point average in SAT, ACT, etc. scores required for an East Asian, Southeast Asian. It's very annoying to have to say both of those in order. I wish we could just say Oriental, but that's offensive. So basically, benefit black students at the cost of a much smaller minority in America, East Asian, Southeast Asian students. This effectively gave student spots to black students who did not get high enough grades and test scores. And this spot was taken from a potential Asian students. White people are actually in between these two, so black students would get in with lower scores than a white student, but white students with lower scores than East Asian students would still get in. The white students were effectively being treated similarly to before DEI, with some exceptions. White students were being harmed a little, but not as much as East Asians, is my point. And the reason I'm making this point is the leftist claims to want to help minorities. These are minorities. Unless you are Japanese or Thai, your ancestors were colonized. I thought you cared about that. Anyway, this shows that the left-wingers that run the universities are aware of who the best and worst students are, and they are not caring about minority status. They simply are trying to force equal outcomes. But anyway, the argument that the left would openly make is that schools and standardized tests, as well as math and science, are racist. One second.
I misunderstand. Are we saying that 2 + 2, if you say it's 4, that's racist? I mean, that sounds like we may be mischaracterizing it. What, if you can quickly sum it up?
No, that's not mischaracterizing it at all. Math is basically racist.
Okay, I don't need to hear any more of that. So math is racist. Now that's I'm being a bit unfair. There are, of course, liberals that won't agree with that, but the more common statement will be standardized tests benefit those from the local majority race of a country. The implication being because standardized tests have a cultural aspect would be what they would say. Herein lies the issue. The majority race in America is white, and the best test takers in America are, again, the East Asian, Southeast Asians. So this claim is false. The only way this could be correct is if the white people were the best test takers, and of course Asians of East and Southeast persuasion are a smaller minority than black people. So if it's just the more of a minority you are, the worse at taking a test you will be. It just makes no sense. And also black Americans have historically been in America for much longer than Asian Americans. They should be, and frankly are, more American culturally than a first or second generation Chinese American person. So that goes, again, none of this makes sense. I am convinced that the left-wingers are lying. They might also be lying to themselves, but I believe this is just a lie. If math is racist and white supremacist, as previously claimed,
And math is basically racist.
I had to say that again. Why are East Asians the best at math? Okay, I think we all know the answer to that one. Also, here is a chart of the Trump round 2 administration data on what SAT and ACT scores were required by people who were Asian, white, and black in order to get into high-end like medical schools, Ivy League schools. And as you can see, Asian Americans required either a 1450 to a 1550 plus on their SAT, white Americans a 1400 to 1520, and black applicants were admitted with as low as a 1280 to 1420. This is clearly not even close. The ACT, same thing. Asian Americans needed a 33 to 35, whites needed a 32 to 34, and blacks needed a 28 to 32. And this is what left-wingers created because, of course, the left has taken over the American university system. Now, let's look at this through the lens of game theory. Society without DEI. So this is what society was like when there was no DEI. And we're going to focus on the medical schools and medical industry in the United States. So in this scenario, we have college admissions and society. In the first game theory situation, we have a higher education system, specifically the medical field, so med school, before DEI. The admissions will only allow students to enter the school if they have high enough grades, high enough ACT, SAT scores, and of course more than that, such as being a team captain, a leader in the school band, mastering an instrument, being the best on your gymnastics team. You get my point. You need more than just being a good student to separate yourself from the other students you are competing with to get into this medical school. The school, if we're looking at the time period roughly between 1970 and 1990, would not care about your race, and then you went to the med school. You had to earn this incredibly difficult degree, and you had an equal chance of being failed out of the program if your grades dipped below a certain point. So Agent 1 is the school system of med schools open their hand out for cooperation with society in goodwill. These are the best students we could find to become doctors in our society. Agent 2 represents society, so they will in good faith open their hands in cooperation and hire these new doctors to hospitals and other places doctors are hired to, trusting that these were the best and brightest that the schools could find. And after selecting the correct people through admissions, they also weeded out the ones that could not hack the program, right? If you couldn't make it, they didn't keep you, so they could keep a certain percentage of black students. You're not good enough, get out. We don't want you anywhere near the medical field. Agent 1 is now a hired and working doctor and is opening themselves up for cooperation with society. Agent 2 is society in this case. Patients using the doctors. These patients trust Agent 1 because Agent 1 did not mess around with admissions or was not the product of messed around admissions or what standards were held when they were students. So they hold out their hand for cooperation and trust the doctor for their medical needs. This is a functioning society. This is what I, the Mobius Strip, want. Here's the same story, but now DEI is being implemented. All right, so we have Agent 1, who is obviously the leftist, and we have Agent 2 here. College are now lowering standards that black students are held to when they apply to become students at an Ivy League or medical school college. East Asians are held to a significantly higher standard, and white students are being held to a standard in between the two, higher than black students, but lower than East Asian students. Not only are the admissions being held to a different standard, but while at the school, black students are not dropping out for grades and performance that would have led to a white or Asian student failing the program. Here is a video of that.
When you are applying for medical school, everyone is going to tell you not to apply with a 2.7 GPA and a 498 MCAT because you won't get in. It's important that you apply anyway. And guess what? She got into medical school. Why? Not because she earned it, but because of DEI.
All right, so there's a lot of videos of those. I actually feel a little bad for the students because many of them think they're showing a inspirational video on their Instagram Live, but what they're really doing is showing what the schools are doing to the medical field. Now, the leftists who run America's universities got away with this for some time before society noticed, but when society noticed, the following happened. So Agent 1 is the university system engaged in DEI practices. Agent 2 is society, again, as before. Agent 1 is graduating black students who would not have been able to graduate with their credentials if they were not black. Graduating white students who are being held to a similar standard as before DEI, although maybe a slightly higher standard. And graduating Asian students who are being held to a much higher standard than anyone else. This can be shown as pretending to open up your hand for cooperation, but this is a lie, and they are actually attacking, not literally, but lying is not cooperation, but a form of attack. Agent 2 is society, and society falls for this at first, believes that the school system is telling the truth, so holds their hand out for cooperation. They, of course, have their guard down and get screwed by Agent 1's lie and now have severely underqualified doctors that they believed would have been qualified. This led to Agent 2 wanting to hire Asian American doctoral graduates followed by white graduates, not because they dislike or hate black people, but because they know what games the schools are playing. The schools messed with the system, and they genuinely thought there would be no consequences to their actions, a common theme with left-wingers. This led to DEI moving from the schools to the hiring offices and HR departments of these companies that hire doctors. The schools did not simply treat the races like equals and would rather force employers to adopt the racist DEI practices. So let's look at this in game theory again. Agent 1 is still the schools engaged in DEI and now is cooperating with medical employers who are now in on the game, and they're both cooperating in a very nasty way. Agent 2 is society or the employer who is now complicit with the DEI program and is open for cooperation with the schools. They are now hiring black doctors that were held to a lower standard at the similar rate to white and Asian doctors. Agent 1 is now a doctor who has been hired by medical employers after going through the DEI program. Agent 2 is the patients and potential patients who are looking for doctors or generally society. Agent 2 now believes that the best doctors are Asians, as DEI is an open secret. The left will unironically call these people white supremacists because they know that Asians are held to a higher standard and want a not white Asian doctor. Agent 1 will call you racist for noticing all of this, and Agent 2 will vote for a government that ends DEI. Also, to the Asian person question, are the Asian students self-aware?
It's a good way to overcome past discrimination. But in my experience, as an Asian American, I'm not exactly sure how that works for me, because it's much more difficult for Asian Americans to gain admittance to schools than for white students, for instance. And I don't think that you'll see in the past any instance of Asians discriminating against whites. So for me, that sort of just falls flat.
So of course, this is an open secret. Asian families would know this. Asian parents would push their kids even harder because they knew they were being discriminated against. And with the exception of, I think, Vietnamese and Filipino Americans, it is quite odd. And again, I separated those two groups. Besides those two groups, Asian Americans still vote, not overwhelmingly, but slightly more Democrat than Republican, which was interesting. They were voting against their own interests in this case. But anyway, what happens next? Well, Trump is the clear result of this, right? The DEI it was one of the major things that led to the general population wanting Trump. So that's the first thing. We also had the court cases involving DEI. Now that DEI is on the clear decline, we can look at the admissions data to see if the left's claim that this is all white supremacy, and if that's true, or if the right wing's claim that that they want equal treatment, and this will probably benefit Asian students best. And we can actually see, based on the reversion of DEI, which one's true, right? So the right, as well as many moderates and non-political people, will say, no, this is not white supremacy, but this will benefit the best students. There are many people of many races who will be able to complete this program, and your DEI program is actually hurting Asian Americans more than white Americans, and so your claim that this complaint is just white supremacy is insane. We can actually now show Johns Hopkins has ended most of their, if not all of their DEI programs, and we can look at their most recent admissions. So the key changes in the freshman year class after the ending of DEI. Asian American students rose sharply from 25.6% in 2023 to 45.1% in 2025. Obvious white supremacy, that's a joke. Black students dropped significantly from 9.8 to 13.8% to 4 to 5.7%. Hispanic students roughly halved from 20 to 21% to 10 to 10.7%. Underrepresented minorities, not sure why they clumped all these together, but big drop from 37 to 17.6. And then white students relatively stable. So remember, the left wing's claim is that this is all white supremacy, which would mean that the dramatic increase should be with white students. The right wing's claim is they don't care about the race, they care about the quality of student. And if we're going to be honest, Asian students are the best students. And so this getting rid of DEI would help the Asian students. The data has been very clear that this has helped Asian students. Something that bothers me is that Hispanics are, of course, somewhere between part white and completely white, and their ancestors were the literal conquistadors that invented European colonialism, and left-wingers who claim to hate colonialism, of course, were using DEI to help the direct descendants of the conquistadors, which makes no sense at all. Moving on. We have not yet actually won our fight to treat the races as equals and holding the races to an equal standard so that we can have a high trust and functioning society. It is incredibly important that professions like doctors and some of the most important professions are the best people that we can have, and not a checklist to make politicians and left-wingers feel good about themselves. The existence of East Asian excellence in America really does make left-wingers very angry, and it does seem to disprove many left-wing inherent arguments. So I'm going to make a little shift in the last part of this video and show one of my more interesting theories about why this is. In the 1960s, Lyndon B. Johnson created what was called the Great Society and changed immigration in America. And as a result, immigration changed in America dramatically. So what was the Great Society? Lyndon B. Johnson created what would become the most expensive welfare program in the history of the world. This program could not functionally exist simultaneously with Ellis Island style immigration, so we changed how we looked at immigration. Now, of course, there's many complaints about the change. I'm not giving every single detail about this change, but primarily the reason that immigration had to change after creating a massive welfare state is we can no longer have the American dream of coming, you're a poor peasant potato farmer from Southern Ireland, like half of my ancestors, and you came to America and you made something of yourself, and your great-grandchildren are now, accountants on their way to the upper middle class. Hello, that's me. My great-great-great-great-great-grandparents could have never imagined how great of a life I had. Once you create a welfare system, that can't happen. The very, very poor would come to America and simply get on welfare. And so we had to change how we allowed immigrants in the country. So now we care if you are at risk of coming from a poor country and immediately just getting on our welfare programs, because life in America on welfare is better than life in a poor country. This would lead to millions moving to America's welfare program and bankrupting the entire system and country. It is my opinion that the original American dream of coming from a poor country and making something of yourself died under Lyndon B. Johnson's watch. Now, what groups of people are, let's be honest folks, generally good students, but come from poor countries or countries that maybe have an authoritarian regime that's preventing them from being successful? Well, that's right. It's going to be East Asian people. It's going to be Southeast Asian people. So good students with high-end jobs already lined up are considered safe immigrants who are not going to come here and hop on any sort of welfare program. It is because of this that many Asian Americans can trace their families moving to America to after 1965. But here's the interesting part. The U.S. immigration system was not doing this on purpose, but what was happening is the best and brightest from countries like China, Korea, and other Oriental countries were coming to America. These individuals were already more intelligent and motivated than the average person from their home countries of China, Korea, and etc. And these first-generation immigrants have a heavy tendency to be traditional and conservative, and so they want to marry and have a family with someone from their own culture. This happens after they move to America, and so they find another recent immigrant from their home culture. The other immigrant who came from their home culture also went through the strict immigration system that selected for highly intelligent and motivated individuals. This means that that married couple is significantly more intelligent than both the average American, but also the average person from their home country. When they have children, these children are more often than not significantly more intelligent than the average person in America and the average person from their home country. In a way, the U.S. immigration system has accidentally created a eugenics program that created a distinctly American race of super Asians. And I'm trying to be funny on purpose, but I think we've all noticed. I mean, the joke where the U.S. math team beat the China math team for the first time ever and they're all Chinese Americans. Like, I don't think this is a funny joke. I think this was an accidental eugenics program that was all the unintended consequence, the unintended byproduct of the Democratic Party creating a welfare system, which entire purpose was to create a permanently bribed voting class for a forever poor people in America. And this was just the weirdest and most unpredictable side effect of it. Feel free to let me know in the comments below how you think I'm wrong, but I do think that there's a significant amount of truth to this theory. So I am the Mobius Strip. It is my dream to live in a high-trust society. I want to live in one, and I want you to as well. My videos will show current and historical events in regards to game theory and second-order effects. Come join me and let me know how much you disagree with me in the comments below. If you have a full-blown argument with someone in my comments section, that will have the second-order effect of the algorithm sending my video to more people. Follow me on X and look at my posts, but never at my comments I make under other people's posts. Oh my goodness. Stay safe, find cooperative folks, work hard, play, pray, and relax. I'll see you later.